Williams singing it in real life.
You guys believe that tonight?
Keep going in. I want to go in and see him. Can we go in, Mommy? Where's Mommy? Can we go inside?
When he told you you were true,
Delilah.
you'll forever be wrong. When he told you you should run away, never find home. He told you you were
Zach Williams.
you should be
Let's
ashamed.
see.
He told you you could be the one. The grace can never change. Oh, fear. He is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear. He is a liar. You rob your rest, steal your happiness, cast your feet in the fire. Cause fear, he is a liar. Oh, let your fire fall and cast out on my feet. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. You guys sing that?
Subscribe if you like Zach Williams.
Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Let your fire fall, cast out on my feet. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Oh, let your fire fall, cast out on my feet. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Oh, fear, he is a liar. You will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, he is a liar. You will rob your rest, steal your happiness, cast your fear in the fire. Cause fear, he is a
Yeah, baby.
I've never seen him in real life. Anybody? Never mind.
Thank you guys.
Oh, you guys say my name.
My feet hurt.
So over the years, I've had the chance to share my story, my testimony with people at theaters, church services, concerts, fairgrounds, you name it. And I've always tried to be clear as I can when I say I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have had it not been for my mom and dad, had it not been for the relationship that they had with Jesus and bringing me up in church. I wouldn't have known that there was a God out there that loved me so much that he sent his son to die on the cross. I wouldn't have known about this Jesus that died for my sins, and that even though I was running as far and as fast as I could from him for years, he was running faster. He was pursuing me. And I like to thank him every night, and I like to offer just a word of encouragement to mom and dads who may be here tonight. Maybe you've got somebody in your life that's going through something that you prayed they would never have to deal with, and hope that they would never have to go through. Just keep trusting and believing. God has a plan for your life. He has a plan for their lives. His plans are perfect. His timing's perfect. I can look out here and see there's a lot of people in this place tonight too that wouldn't be here had it not been for a mom and daddy that prayed, or a grandma and grandpa that prayed, or aunt and uncle that prayed for you. And so just keep praying and trusting God for those things that you're asking and believing for. I thought tonight I would kind of share a little bit about just kind of my mom and dad's side of the story. Me and my wife wrote a book this past year, and I didn't realize the therapy session that I was in for when I started writing this book, but I've learned that just talking about some of these things and telling some of these stories, there's a healing process that goes along with it. And I shared a story earlier in the spring on tour that I never really shared before, but I thought it was maybe time to talk about it some. And, I think as parents, we always try to spare our children from making the same mistakes that we made. Kids, if you're out there listening, listen to your mom and dad. They know a little bit about something. But I think as kids growing up, you don't think your mom and dad know anything, and so we go out and we live our own lives and we try to take on the world. And the thing is the devil, he knows the things that your family struggle with. He knows the things that your mom and your dad and your generational things that go through. He knows, he knows all about those things. And so, my dad and me worked on a construction company for a number of years. And 15 years I worked for my dad, from the time I was about 18 to 33, and I had a lot of talks on job sites. And it was 15 dark years for me because I was running. After being raised in church, I didn't know anything other than church. But me and my dad, we sat down on a job site one day to take a lunch break, and he told me, he said, I got to tell you a story. He said, when I met your mother, I was living a very similar life that you were living. And at the time, I was in my late 20s. I was married. I had a son. I had a daughter on the way, and I was on the verge of losing it all, losing my wife and kids. He said, when I met your mom, I was partying all the time. I didn't want to slow down, didn't want to settle down. And your mom wanted to start a family. And he said, we ended up separating for about 6 months. And he said, while we were separated, I found Jesus and he brought us back together. He said, we made a commitment to raise our children in church. And he said, so we decided the best way to do that would be just to move away from the small town that we grew up in and start a new life, get away from some of the people that we've been hanging out with. My dad had decided he wanted to go to a Bible college, and so they moved to Pensacola, Florida. And then a year later, in the summer of 1978, they had me, and I was born. And my dad said, we had you dedicated as a baby, and we raised you in church. He said, over the years, we've watched you struggle. And he said, it's been hard for me to see because he said, as a father, I wanted to give up so many times. He said, because I'm always worried that, we did something wrong, we didn't do enough. He said, for you, watching the lifestyle that you were living, if something were to ever happen to you, and I didn't believe that you went to heaven or didn't know that you went to heaven, he said, I don't know that I could bear that as a father. I would feel like a failure. And I left to go to Europe in the summer of 2012 after him telling me some of these stories. I was in a dark place. I was going on tour with a band that I was in. Like I said, I was at the end of my rope, and I just remember saying, God, if you're real, prove it. If you can prove it, I'll leave this life behind me. A week into that tour, we were driving across Spain one day, and a guy scanning radio stations on our bus. I hear a song called Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave come across the radio. And the song stopped me dead in my tracks. And I just remember thinking, man, all these years in church, I missed it. I realized God saw me in a way that I couldn't see myself. My family sees me in a way I couldn't see myself. My wife, my children. I came home from that tour. I quit my band. I gave my life to the Lord on June 10th of 2012 in the floor of my closet of my bedroom. I just remember how our lives started to change. I watched relationships that have been broken. Relationship with my family, my parents, and all of a sudden me and my dad and my mom, we had all these new things to talk about. Me and my dad were talking about music all the time. Not long after that, I got invited to help a church launch a campus, and I started leading worship. Before you know it, I was walking around on the construction site, pulling my phone out, writing lyrics in my phone. I started writing music, and I started playing these songs at my church. Me and my dad sat down on the job again one day, and he said, I got to tell you a story that I've never shared with you. I said, yeah, okay. He said, I told you when you were born that we had you dedicated at this church as a baby. And I said, yeah, I remember you talking about that. I said, well, what happened was that we were walking down to the front of the church that morning. He said, you were screaming, you were hollering, making all this noise. And he said, the preacher, he said, man, he said, this kid's got a strong set of lungs. He'll probably be a singer one day. And everybody had a laugh.
It's so blurry.
He said, then the pastor looked at my parents.
So blurry on this.
He said, this child will be a voice for his generation. And I was
Oh.
33 years old at the time. I was sitting there crying.
Yeah.
My dad was 60. We were sitting on a stack of sheetrock in a garage. It was about 100 degrees outside. We were sharing a can of Viennese sausages, drinking a Mountain Dew. And I was like, Dad, why have you never told me this story? And he said, well, I didn't want to put any pressure on you. He said, and to be honest, he said, growing up, he said, I thought about what that pastor said. He said, but you never showed any interest in music until you messed your leg up in college. He said, and you came home your freshman year and took my guitar back to school and said you were going to learn how to play guitar. And I thought, you don't just pick up a guitar and start playing music. He said, a year later you came back and you were pretty good. You started writing these songs. He said, and then you ended up living in the bar rooms and nightclubs for the next 15 years. And he said, me and your mom would just pray every time we would go to these concerts. And they went to a lot of them. They would sit in smoky bars till 2 in the morning, watching me get wrecked on stage every night just to make sure that I could get home okay. He said, we would pray every night. God would take this one day and use it for his glory. He said, I'm telling you this because you have an opportunity to change lives with your music the way that your lives have been changed by music. I don't say it to you guys to brag. To be honest, it's a hard story to tell. I say it because I don't feel worthy most days. I don't get it right most days. I get it wrong more than I get it right.
Go for it.
I'm a work in progress. And I don't want you guys to ever let anybody tell you that you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, that you don't belong, because God has plans for your life. And I've learned over just the last few years, the biggest reason I think that we say no when we start to hear that voice in our head, when God starts prompting us to do stuff, it's because we don't feel qualified to do what he's asking us to do. If you just say yes to that voice, just say yes to God, he will give you the tools, he'll give you everything that you need to go and do his work. My favorite Bible verse is Jeremiah 29:11. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you, for hope in the future. And I believe that with all my heart. I believe everybody here tonight has a special plan. God's going to use you. I wrote this song. This is called Plan for Me. You had a plan for me, even though I couldn't see. You had a hope and a promise for my life. I never walk alone, but I struggle to believe. Every step I took, you never left my side. Oh, every step I took, you never left my side. Your relentless love, ever chasing me, and your amazing grace has opened my eyes, and now I can see. I tried to run away. I was not you were enough. was bound, you set me free. And at my worst, you did not leave. When I was darkness, you were light. When I was dead, you breathed new life. God, you changed my destiny. Now the only thing I see is your you had a hope and a promise for my life.
Everybody who likes Zach Williams, comment down below.